caught up in the nightmare of the cladding scandal, the cost can be eye-watering, running into the hundreds of thousands of pounds. But many are also having to contend with another scandal, that of rip-off service charges, again dictated by the freeholders of buildings, which can run into many hundreds of pounds every month, with little to show for it. In the latest of our films on the building safety crisis, our policy editor Lewis Goodall has been investigating how these issues are linked. It hinges on the leasehold-freehold divide itself, a centuries-old system unique to English law, which is making the crisis still worse.
For leaseholders trapped in the nightmare of the building safety crisis, there's one word which characterises every day of their lives: powerlessness. It is an irony that that powerlessness flows from something which was supposed to set them free: buying a property. But it's the manner in which they've bought their property, the peculiarity of the English leasehold system, which is the problem. Not quite owners, not quite tenants, betwixt and between. Obligations, responsibility, without the power to set the pace.
And you have the tall building here, which has, you can see, all the streaking down the cladding and down the wood, and that's because the freeholder just hasn't ever bothered to clean or maintain that building. The wood should be regularly treated.
So it's never cleaned? Nothing better sums up this asymmetry than the increasing scandal of service charges, in many cases going up rapidly. Service charges are the sums leaseholders pay to the freeholders who technically own the building for communal facilities, general maintenance and so on. Residents in Limehouse Court in East London have seen theirs increase substantially.
Since we've moved in, the maintenance work has generally not been done, and the service charge has increased by about 40% or so. It was just under £4,000 when we moved in. We're now paying almost £6,000 a year for a two-bedroom flat without any facilities.
When they asked why the fees were going up so much, they were told it was for essential decoration. Decoration, the leaseholders say, hasn't taken place. Though the justifications are few and far between, the freeholders and their representatives, the leaseholders again say, are difficult to get hold of. And in addition to the service charge, there are cladding problems.
We had a 9 or 10 month dispute with the managing agents where we asked if they could provide us with a copy of the report that we'd paid for, identifying the problems with the building, and they refused for almost a year. We've been told by local estate agents, firstly the EWS1 issue, the cladding problems mean we can't sell it because no one can get a mortgage on it. We've also been told that even if that were resolved, that because of the amount of the service charge, our property simply isn't attractive because it's so much higher and the property is in such a worse condition than any of the other properties in the area.
It isn't unusual for freeholders to be remote entities. In the case of Limehouse Court, it's managed by KFH, a large London estate agent. We asked KFH a series of detailed questions. They didn't answer any of them. They in turn are overseen by another company, Estates and Management, who represent the freeholder, Flamboyant Limited, a company of which there is very little digital presence and which made £5.4 million in profit in 2020. Because freeholding is big business, the regulation can be modest. Leaseholders can be charged for virtually anything, even keeping a pet, ground rent, window repairs, and remedies for disgruntled leaseholders are relatively few and objectively complicated.
They are very technical, complicated processes. Landlord and tenant law is a very complicated area, so it's difficult for unrepresented leaseholders to succeed.
So it's not easy. It's not an easy process. And can be an expensive process, as all litigation can be.
Absolutely. You could be looking at runaway costs that are disproportionate to the amounts in issue. The law is not fit for purpose. It was last revised getting on for 20 years ago. There are an enormous number of very wealthy, powerful, politically connected people. Every time someone comes along and tries to take away their lunch by reforming leasehold, they put up a strong fight, and normally the government caves in. So we've ended up with a patchwork quilt and a system that's not fit for purpose for the people living in these buildings.
The government is proposing leasehold reform centred on abolishing ground rents. But the question is whether that will be enough. The leaseholder-freeholder split is basically a bizarre remnant of feudalism. Look elsewhere in Europe and you won't find anything quite like it. They've moved to the novel idea that if you live in a flat and you pay a mortgage on a flat, then you own the flat with all of the responsibilities and privileges therein. But though excess service charges and other more minor charges are a problem for leaseholders in themselves, the worry is that this system has intersected with a wider building safety crisis with catastrophic results. In the case of Sophie, who lives in a different building, the issue of fire safety charges and service charges have quite literally been rolled into one.
We recently got an update on our service charge, which was £14.9 million for the whole building, and my share of that is £208,000. It's due to the cladding remediation work. We've had £10 million provisionally signed off from the fund. Obviously, that's still £5 million short, and that would leave about £60,000 in my service charge for me to pay, which when you get presented with a £200,000 bill, you start telling people that £60,000 will be okay or is good, but obviously it's not something that I can afford and my neighbours certainly can't afford.
It must just feel like they're just constantly coming to you asking for more money, like a cash machine.
Yeah, I've spent my evenings thinking about the best way to go bankrupt, or what going bankrupt or what impact it will have on my life and my job, and how I'll get to work, how am I going to afford trains to my office if I have a £60,000 bill, all of those kind of things that you just never expected to be thinking about.
The cliche is that an Englishman's home is his castle, except with a leasehold system, it's anything but. It's someone else's castle. You just have the right to stay there and the responsibility to pay for everything else until you leave. And in this breathtaking crisis, this peculiarity, this curiosity of English law is now centre stage.
Lewis Goodall, in response to our report, KFH said, "We take all of our residents' concerns extremely seriously, and particularly those relating to safety. The estates and management company did not get back to us with a comment despite several requests."